Hello, everybody. This is Brian Ankney with AutoSuccess magazine. I appreciate you all taking the time out of your day today to join us. Today, my guest is Mike Morales from High Tech Locksmiths. We're going to talk about how to sell more cars and make extra key revenue by simply maintaining best practices with your automotive key process. Now, before we get started, a couple of things I'd like to touch on. If this is your first time using GoToWebinar and don't know how to ask a question, just look to the right. If you're on a computer, a PC, or a tablet, or a laptop, it'll be on the left or the right side of your screen. There's a GoToWebinar panel. Near the bottom, it says questions. There's a plus mark right there. Click that plus mark, type the question, hit enter. Question goes in. That's a very simple one. Now, if you're on an Android or an Apple, they both work a little bit differently. Each of the different Android manufacturers is a little bit different, but essentially you're either going to have a header, a footer, or a picture frame that goes around your device. On there, you won't see the word questions, but there is a question mark. Click that question mark, and it'll allow you to type in your question. And now, again, depending on your device, you might be able to just swipe that away, or you might actually have to click on another icon to get that to go away. And that icon is the one that looks like a flat screen television or a desktop monitor. You click that, you're back on the webinar. Now, we are going to hold all the questions till the end. We will get to all the questions, and I invite you to please type them in as we go so that we've got a nice list of questions to get rolling with as soon as the presentation ends. Now, one more thing before we get started. If you haven't joined AutoSuccess webinars yet, I invite you to and encourage you to. It's a group that we have on Facebook. You just search for it in the search bar on Facebook. It'll take you right there. You request to join. Now, in this group, you can interact with our speakers, you can interact with other attendees, and you can interact with AutoSuccess staff. If you have a great idea or a topic you'd love to see covered or a person you think would be great for a webinar, please suggest that stuff. We do these things for you. That's why we don't, they're free webinars, they're educational. Please let us know the topics you'd like to see, and I'll do my best to cover them for you. Now, more importantly than just future topics, AutoSuccess webinars is a place for you guys to interact with each other. You're all going to learn new things on each and every one of these webinars. You're going to go back, you're going to try and implement them. You're going to experience successes. You're going to experience failures. Now, what I invite you to do is share those successes and failures with each other, and especially best practices and things that you find to be helpful as you implement these, and help each other along the way to becoming successful with all these new ideas. Now, with that being said, I would like to turn the reins over to Mike Morales. Mike, please take it away.
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you, AutoSuccess and Brian, for the platform and the opportunity to come on here today. We have three main points mentioned in the topic of today's webinar. One is, of course, selling more cars, making a little bit of extra revenue with the keys, and best practices using with automotive keys in the process. So, customer demand for a second key, missing car keys are all problems with every dealership experiences on a regular basis. So let's put the key into perspective here. Over 40% of used vehicles in the reconditioning stage, have no second key. Now, some of you are saying, you're wrong. That's more like 100% of my dealership. But no matter the percentage on your particular lot, the fact is that the vehicle having no key or no second key can affect the flow of your reconditioning process. And then on the customer end, it can separate their overall buying experience from an okay experience to even to a stellar experience, or happy experience. And as we all know, many business problems are actually customer experience problems. So if you want to be blunt here, selling a car with no second key or not having a key process in place is no way a good practice. The dynamic of the car sale business has so many variables. So if you're on this call today to better understand something as simple as just the key and improving that key process, you're taking the right approach in being detail oriented and thorough, and that's the best approach. And I thank you again for all of you for attending. You can go to the next slide. Oh, I'm sorry, the next slide after that one. I'm Mike Morales. I currently work as Marketing and Sales Director for the largest automotive mobile locksmith company in the country, in fact in the world. Half my time is spent traveling the country, visiting dealers, big ones, small ones, auto auctions, car rental agencies, basically finding ways to positively impact by providing our key service, fitted to your operations or their operations. Of course, I'm based out of Miami, and after the webinar, I'm going to head to the Keys, just to have Christmas in Miami. So let's move on to the next page here. Automotive key technology is definitely evolving here. It's evolving on a consistent basis since the introduction of the transponder key. That was back in, 1996. It was introduced by Ford. I was 16 years old, by the way. I was driving age, so transponders have been around my entire life. Since the introduction of the transponder, it's evolved. You've got, actually what a transponder is an electronic chip inside the key that, when it's turned onto the on position, there's an antenna ring around the ignition that sends, what is it, a burst, it's a frequency signal, and what that does is it powers the chip and it sends another signal, an ID code that disables the immobilizer ultimately. That's, you say that's a lot of information, TMI, right? But just so you understand, as a result of the transponder vehicles, the transponder key, vehicle theft has greatly decreased over the years. Car makers, they're making it a point to come out with the most attractive, expensive, sophisticated, car keys that they can possibly come up with. I mean, a lot of people use them as, you can say like small trophies or small reminders that you have the best and new, key or car on the market. Here on the bottom, you're going to see the evolution of the smart key. This was first introduced by Mercedes-Benz in 1998 on the S-Class vehicle. In addition, you're going to see some of the first smart keys, meaning a fob that works and you could start the vehicle by a push button or an ignition switch, all while the key fob is in your pocket. Some vehicles automatically adjust user preferences like seat and wheel positions, mirror settings, stereo temperature, based on the smart key. Some Fords actually have the My Key setting that limits the vehicle's speed, and that's more aimed at new teenage drivers. And on this next slide here, further evidence pointing towards the advancement of the smart key is the new BMW key with a touchscreen digital display. You can not only start the car, but you can also check fuel levels. You check the service schedule. You can also use a remote control to park the car while you're standing outside, and as if we can get any lazier these days. It's kind of like having a radio control car. You have a life-size version though. That key will set you back about $1,000. But that's nothing for someone who just purchased a brand new, BMW that that matches the year, or and it's kind of funny, when people buy a Mercedes and then they complain about the price tag of a key. It's kind of like, what do you expect? It's like buying a Hummer and expecting your gas bill to stay the same. So the next slide here, as technology advances, you definitely have challenges that come along with that, and I want to get into some of that here. The programming procedures, of course, these keys have to be programmed to the vehicle. These procedures may change year over year. New hardware, software comes to the market, and what this does is it leaves your local locksmiths and every locksmith with expensive software updates, new programming that they need to learn in order to keep up with the newer vehicles hitting the market. So what you find is, many locksmiths out here that are limited in capabilities. They often say, I can't cut that certain type of key. I can't program or do this year, make, and model. And it's not because they're bad locksmiths or they suck. It's because technology and the amount of inventory they have to have on their trucks in order to do 100% of the vehicles on that lot is almost impossible to keep up with for them, especially for a small-time operation, a small locksmith company. Now those companies or those locksmiths may be able to keep up with maybe a smaller buy here, pay here lot. But for those that are on this call, your factory dealers, your big box stores, Joe Schmo's locksmiths, they're not going to cut it for you. They might last about a week before you maybe kick them off the lot. So, in fact, there's so many opportunities for them to, for you to understand that they're not equipped for your current inventory. And there's a ton of challenges out there. Here's one right here, is the Outlander. Just last week, a dealer asked for a 2007 Mitsubishi Outlander, and when they heard, I had to quote the key for one of my technicians, and the price, when they heard the price, they were scared. They didn't want to pay it. They didn't want to buy the key. They want to pay $250 for this key, and that was their max price. Now you say, $250 is a lot, but in actuality, it's actually $50 below our actual part, the cost for that part, below what it costs for us to even buy that key, to put it on a truck and keep it in our inventory. So you can ask yourself, why is that key so much? Well, that key only works for that year, make, and model of that vehicle. So that key doesn't work for an 06 Outlander or 08 Outlander. It only works for the 2007. So that's in one example. In contrast, you have the like the Nissan football keys that come in maybe 13 different variations. So when you're adding that key to that Nissan, that football key has to match the vehicle, what the vehicle's equipped for. This leads into very many variations and combinations of buttons for that particular year, make, and model. So as a customer, you expect your locksmith to have all these keys available when you need them, and the advancements of technology and consistent evolution of the key is making it harder and harder for you as a dealer and for your key vendor to keep up. So your takeaway from that is basically to understand that it was a brass key first, and then it moved towards the basic transponder, and then the smart, intelligent key. So right now it's time for you to make a conscious, well thought out, even a consistent effort on how you can improve your current key process for the future of your business and your dealership. Let's go to the next slide. Now, one thing to do here is always to keep eyes on our customer expectations and put ourselves in our customer's shoes. There's plenty of scenarios that that play out on a daily basis. A man may come to your lot and with his wife, and they spend all day at your dealership, and they test drive the vehicle, and then once you start moving, towards the post-sale, post-test drive questions, you ask them, you asking your customer, was this everything you were looking for in your next car? Was there anything missing? Was there anything missing from this vehicle that you wanted? And then you go into the numbers, you go into negotiations, and that right there was probably the best time or opportunity for that customer to ask for 2 keys. And now, even though it's a used car, the customer feels that the car probably has 2 keys, and they probably don't even worry about that part of buying a vehicle. And that's your customer's expectations. So, negotiations go well. You close the sale and move towards delivery, and make sure the vehicle's clean. You gas it up, smells good. It's all smiles, and then you hand over the key to their new vehicle, just like this picture here, to the husband. But the wife is saying, where's my key? Where's my key? I need a key. That's when the music stops, the smiles turn into frowns, and then the husband has to ask, the salesman for, another key. And of course, the salesman will tell you the vehicle only comes with one key. So this is the point where, we got to pause and we have to ask ourselves, why am I sending my customer home worried about having only one key with a wife and a kid and a family? You're thinking, you didn't tell your sales manager when you asked them, when you approached the number, when you were talking to them about the numbers, and that you needed to maybe give the customer a second key. So what are you supposed to do now? You have a customer that's basically demanding for a second key. So this is a scenario that plays out over and over. The sales manager going back to the sales associate and saying, I never approved that second key for you. Or the sales associates are coming out of their own pockets. I've seen that plenty of times for second keys at that point, just to satisfy that customer. These customers are going home unhappy with one key. So back to what I previously said is, in no way is selling a car with no second key a good practice. You're leaving homework for your customers after they leave your lot. So now, essentially, what you're doing is your customer now has to go to another dealership if it's an off-brand vehicle that you can't do in-house, and you're sending your customers to the competition to get a key. Now they're going to visit your competitor's service drive. They're going to visit that dealership, and that service drive is going to take their information and contact them and continue to service that vehicle and continually contact that customer moving forward. In extreme cases, they can actually try to convince that customer somehow to return that vehicle they purchased from you right away and buy a vehicle on their lot. So, before I get more into, best practices, let's talk about how to use the key to help sell that car and how to use the key to sell more vehicles. Let's go to our next slide here. So in general, it's a fact that, dealers that are more service-oriented, actually, sell more cars. When you put the list of the top 100 used car stores in the country, 90% of them, sell all their vehicles with 2 keys. Many of them follow a standard of 2 working keys and 1 remote. So they at least have, 1 key or a remote combo and a second key. So, your CarMaxes of the world, Enterprise Car Sales, like U.S. Auto Sales and, of the world, they stand by this standard. So when I say, use the key to sell more cars, this is actual proof that it contributes to the operation. It's part of the magic that helps your operation, sell more cars. We all heard the saying, it takes money to make money now. That would also apply to making a second key to contribute to making that sale. Now this is done also by leveraging. On my next slide, we're going to talk a little bit about that. You have several points in your sales process. I guess one being after you presented your numbers and payment terms, and you're trying to close that you can leverage that key. Actually, it's actually the best time, one, because you're seated, and it's our ideal position for negotiation. So if the customer needs, convincing to buy, you can mention, since it is a used car and the vehicle only comes with 1 key, if they purchase the vehicle today, you'll throw in a second key. You can also, take out a sticky note and write it down, we will pay for the key. So they have confidence in that. These keys are pricey, and and you can help them with that if they choose to purchase today. So if I, so you can ask them, if I can get that hammer for you, will you drive it home today? Now, at that point, you can see if they're ready to buy. But prior to that, you want to do your due diligence and research on the key and ask your, manager for approval to see if you have that kind of leverage for your sale, or if you can even buy a key up to a certain amount. You can even say, we will give you $100 or $200 towards your second key. in your dealership can make like work with a local vendor and make a voucher for this type of purpose, you know, because you're thinking ahead here. So let's just say the customer agrees and, you know, he tells you, I'm going to need a second key because I'm buying this car today. Now your customer's leaving content, your customer's happy with 2 keys, feeling good that they just got a great deal. So every business, you know, has a bottom line, yes. And there's so many unknowns that we can't fix everything on a used car. Let's go to our next slide here. You know, we can't fix everything on a used car. You have to, you know, you can do what you can. You know, clean the vehicle. You can work on the tires, wipers. They're all visual factors that we fix during our recon because they're actually factors that the customer can actually see and consider right away. And included in your recon process should be a key process or some kind of standard. You know, I've worked with dealerships in the past that may only add a second key prior to a sale if the vehicle is over, you know, a certain amount. Maybe it's $10,000, maybe it's $20,000. You know, you have to figure out what works for your dealership, and maybe investing in a second key for a $20,000 vehicle makes more sense. It's just a great topic of discussion to have with your operation. You know, and this all leads to a positive objective of creating and fine-tuning your process. And defining, you know, best practices, you know, for your organization. Benchmarks, when to invest in a second key during your recon. You know, in fact, here you will see a few reasons or, you know, signs to look for, and that should actually trigger you to add a second key or remote here. One is the fact that the existing key does not have the remote functions equal to what the vehicle is equipped for. If your vehicle is equipped for maybe a panic or automatic trunk, sliding doors, but you only have a basic transponder key, you should add a remote to get it up to vehicle spec. This way, the original factory features can be used by the customer, and it's easier, you know, to sell that vehicle. You know, current remote, if it's not functioning correctly, it needs to be replaced because of excess wear. You know, that's all a reflection of your vehicle. You can also you want to also check the batteries first to see if you just can simply pop a battery in there, and you can save the cost of buying a new key. Now, this last one here, it may not apply to all, but for those that may have a separate lot that they do some sort of in-house financing, you can also use a repo key or a basic key that can start the vehicle. So the question is, should you cut a second transponder key and file it away? And this is done in the event of a repo or a default. So, you know, maybe you can just GPS the location and then find the car, start it up, and drive off. You know, you always have to, I guess, remember to turn off the kill switch if you have one installed. But many companies practice this, and they're very successful. They're very successful in turning the vehicles over and over faster on a regular basis. But again, that's more for the buy here, pay here dealers. So on our next page, let's talk a little bit about you know, the automotive key management. Here's a couple examples. The storage cabinets are becoming real popular these days, and I'll touch on this very shortly. On the large cabinets, you know, they have PC-based controllers and state-of-the-art technology. What it does is tracks removals, returns, and, you know, who, what, and when, and why. And those are benefits of those are, you know, to provide an accounting of each key, control the access to those keys in general. And I know you've seen the recent news about groups of individuals breaking into dealers, driving off with the car. So for overnight storage, these are probably your best bets because they are essentially large key safes, but they are a little pricey, of course, depending on the models. A step down from that is the digital lock key safe cabinets. You see in the middle here. They hold a few hundred keys. Cheapest I've seen was around $500. This is something you would, you know, bolt onto the wall or, you know, to keep all your keys. But none of this here will stop the human error factor. But they are definitely great safeguards. And one extra thing about having an actual key box, which everybody doesn't, you would think everyone has a key box, but they don't. One thing about the key box is you can actually have an overview and see how many vehicles are missing remotes or second keys or just need to be replaced. So the goal would be to have your key box in the best shape possible. Nothing missing. All keys have remotes, and all vehicles that require 2 keys have those. So the requirement of 2 keys, that leads us to our next combo, our next slide here, is certified pre-owned vehicles. These vehicles typically require a minimum of 2 keys or keyless remotes as listed on the CPO, the Certified Pre-Owned Inspection checklist. This can be handled in-house through your parts department. Many dealers I have encountered are paying the parts department for retail for their keys. So they just often they look outside for of their own parts department to get the job done. Now your dealership or your dealer group may have a strong stance on using the internal parts department, but at the same time you want to save your sales department money. So each dealership is different, but when it comes down to cutting a CPO key, I can say that the outside vendor would typically be cheaper and faster in many cases. And the reason being is many parts departments don't keep all the keys in stock. Smaller parts departments may not have the required key machine to cut the key on site. And we could talk a little bit about off-brand vehicles as well, non-CPO vehicles. If you're not cutting your customers' keys in the parts department or your sister dealership, you can at least want to refer your customers to a locksmith vendor. You don't want to leave them hanging with nowhere to go. You'll be amazed how quickly it calms down a situation when you're providing alternative solution as soon as possible. Your customer needs a second key. Well, here's my locksmith. He's dependable. This is his number. You can call him directly. He will work with you. You'll save money on the second key. But of course, that locksmith has to be a very reliable vendor before you co-sign, basically, and put your reputation on the line. So let's go to our next slide, and let's talk about finding that locksmith vendor. The whole business model of automotive locksmithing has grown in the last few years. You're going to see a lot more locksmiths out there wanting your business. So here's some of the common red flags I want you to watch for. Of course, insurance is the issue. You got to make sure your vendor is insured. If the locksmith crashes to a car on your lot and something bad happens, they want insurance to take over it. So you need to make sure you're insured by asking them for their certificate of insurance, right? Next, you have your certification of locksmiths, which is you want to make sure that your locksmith vendor is a certified automotive locksmith. And that they have the required state license. It varies state by state. But you need to be aware of who's on your lot and who you have on your lot, because locksmithing is heavily regulated. Is regulated by the state and also task force like NASTAF, the National Automotive Service Task Force. You don't want a locksmith coming on your lot making a lost key for any, you don't know who they are, because they could contribute to crimes, making keys from vehicles and such. And those are not the people you want on your lot. You don't want that locksmith that does that to also work on your factory dealership. And a LOA certification, Associate Locksmiths of America, is basically a standard when it comes to automotive mobile locksmithing. And they provide standardized testing in addition to maybe a state exam. So, with availability of keys and programming equipment, you may come in contact with startups and they can either be insured or not insured. You know what happens. So you want to make sure that you're looking out for yourself and your dealership as well. So the next thing we want to get into on our next slide here is a question you want to ask yourself: does your locksmith have the capabilities and resources to get the job done? And as we mentioned before about the difficulties with having the right keys and remotes in general, your locksmith needs to have enough on-hand inventory to do a very large percentage of vehicles on your current lot. And if they don't, you want to maybe give them a window of time to adjust their inventory. Maybe they can go source in the next week or two, or you're going to have to look for another vendor who has a large on-hand inventory that can work with you and your customers. At the same time, you want to make sure that the products that they're selling are reliable. It is a reflection of you and your dealership as well. If a customer keeps coming back saying the key stopped working, that's a sign that your vendor is selling you maybe a substandard product. Just for reference, in our trucks, we keep maybe 50, 60 grand worth of inventory just to handle our current customer base. So it costs money, to make money. So if they're going to service your lot, they need to invest in the inventory that's going to be able to handle your lot on a regular basis. And having the key is is actually only half the battle. On our next slide here, we'll talk a little bit about the programming. There's not one single tool that programs all vehicles. There's a combination. There's a combination of laptop programming. We use a cheat code, MVP, along with a handful of other tools that we plug up to the vehicle to program. Each vehicle, has different programming and procedures, and as I mentioned before, they change on a regular basis. Software subscriptions have to be updated, and that changes from year to year. And not only do you have to pay for the tool and the programming software, you have to pay each time you use that software. So many times it's like buying coins. Every time you program, you have to buy a coin to do that. So the goal is to find a locksmith with the most up-to-date software to also support a large percentage of the vehicles on your lot. And in addition, they should have some sort of resource when they're stuck, when they're some kind of technical support that can help them out. Just because they don't know how to program a certain vehicle, they should have a resource that can help coach them along the way, and so you can not leave that vehicle there and get that job done that day. So outside of inventory, programming capabilities, you have much more as well. When you're choosing your locksmith vendor. On our next slide, we'll get into that too as well. Here's a few things you also want to consider. If you have a high volume location, you want to consider the service schedule. Maybe a weekly stop or a bi-weekly stop, will work for your operation. Even if the customers are paying for the key, they're just using your vendor, you can still have them come to the dealership at a certain time during the weekly appointment to meet that vendor. But you want to check with that vendor first to make sure that they have the right key on the truck. You don't want to tell your customers that just purchased the vehicle that your locksmith vendor comes on Wednesdays at 2 o'clock, and then they get there and he does not have that key on his truck. So you want to also work with that vendor and make sure, or you can actually put your customers in contact with that vendor since the customer is actually paying for that key to be sure that they have the right key and they can actually program and make a key for that vehicle. Another factor which comes into play is invoice type. You want an invoice that is personalized, that contains the stock number, the PO number, VIN number, all pertinent information that you guys need when you're looking over your invoices and trying to match everything up. Any important information to reference the work completed. There are small operations, people that still use handwritten invoices, and that's definitely not advised. Your vendor should have customized invoices that are more tailored to your needs on that lot. Let's talk a little bit about pricing. In order to avoid price disputes and any, you need to have some sort of approval system that's implemented. Before a job is completed for a dealer, price should be discussed and approved, or you can actually, as I mentioned prior, you can place some kind of limit. Maybe limit can be placed, any key up to 150 is automatically approved, and anything above that, maybe it needs to, we need to discuss further, or you need to get extra approval. These are just safeguards, preventing the shock of maybe a pricey key. And if you're a dealer group or a large outfit, you may consider working a deal for all your locations. Coverage is also a factor. You want a single vendor to go to use as maybe a preferred vendor of choice. You got to make sure they have that coverage and that footprint. And also, move in that direction, your vendor has more accountability and actually needs to maintain a higher level of service in order to keep all the locations happy, and so they don't lose that that business altogether. So to sum up, this section, the goal here is to find the vendor that can maintain the highest level of service and standard, period, altogether. Move on to our next slide. This is pretty much our last topic here. I know everyone was thinking, how am I going to make extra money from keys? So, this is one way. In the last few years, the practice of, used key, refurbishing has, has come to light. And this is something that can be, you can take advantage of at your dealership to make extra money. You can use the extra money, for maybe company lunches, petty cash, extra dealer expenses, but to sum it up, any key with a button on it, in fact, let me rephrase that. Any factory key with a button on it can be sold to companies that will refurbish it. So there is a business out there. People are buying keys and remotes. You can go on Google right now and find companies. One is you can remotes for cash, off the top of my head, that you can purchase old keys and remotes. They'll purchase those keys and remotes from you for top dollar. So the next time you have maybe like an orphan key, a key that doesn't match a vehicle on your lot, you want to save it. You can have a drawer specific to that, that maybe all employees understand. Place the old keys in this drawer, or even a bucket designated for that. Another thing to consider is when you're wholesaling a vehicle, car, you're sending it to an auction. If you're sending it with 2 keys, you won't hurt anybody's feelings if you take one and and stick it in the key recycling bucket. That key does not need 2 keys, and it's not going to sell for more at the auction because it has 2 keys. At the end of the end of the day, you need 1 key when you're sending that vehicle to the auction. So over time, maybe let's say you have 20 keys, and if you multiply that by $10, that's $200. You multiply that by 12. That could be $2,400 that you of worth of keys throughout the year. So it's definitely something to implement in your key process, and it's definitely worth it to collect these keys and make it a known throughout your dealership that you don't want to throw them away. You don't want anybody else taking them off your lot because they know they're worth money. And just putting that in place there will prevent some of that from happening. So we can go to our next slide. In conclusion, let's see, in conclusion, there are many reasons why a car dealer, may give a customer only 1 key when selling, a used vehicle. It might be, that prior owner did not return all the keys, or when selling or trading in a car. Or it might be that the vehicle was repossessed and the recovery agency purchased only 1 key, only 1 new key in order to, save money. You can, keys are constantly lost on a regular basis. But no matter what, if you're a dealer and you add a 2nd key, one thing you have to understand is that it adds value to that vehicle. The vehicle is actually worth more. So, I would urge you, to look at adding a second key during your recon process. If you're not providing your customer with a dependable locksmith, if you're not, making that second key, you do want to, provide your customer with a dependable locksmith that you can refer them to, and save them that valuable time, save them money. So that was the sum up today's message, is to add those second keys, define your key process, and recycle those old keys. I think you guys heard the word key about 10,000 times in the last 30 minutes. So I hope you guys received enough information here to make some well-informed decisions about your process moving forward. And I guess we can open it up for questions here, if you have any.
Hello, everybody. This is Brian Ankney again. We do have some questions. Anybody who has any other questions, please type them in as we go. I will get to all the questions. Mike, our first question is, in addition to car insurance, what other insurance is needed for a locksmith on the lot?
What other insurance is needed for a locksmith on the lot?
Yeah.
Well, with us, we just have our liability insurance. I think that's pretty much it there. If we crash into a car, we're going to have $2 million there. Insurance to take care of that. So in general, I don't really think you need to ask for more than a certificate of insurance when you're looking for a mobile locksmith vendor on your site.
Okay. Is the dealership liable if the locksmith makes illegal keys on the lot?
Well, of course. To better answer that question, I need to explain a little bit more. So one of the reasons you want to have a certified, registered, and a licensed locksmith is because that information is held, with the state and with ALOA and NASTAF as well. So NASTAF is a task force, and they were organized to actually combat that. And what we do in our company is we have a NASTAF form that we fill out each time we make a lost key for a vehicle, right? So it's a standard of ours that we have some kind of paper trail, and we understand that we need to be accountable for this vehicle, so we have this NASTAF form. Now, in order to have this NASTAF form, in order to make a key for a lost vehicle, we use proof of ownership, right? And then it's just like when you go to a dealership, before you walk, if you're going to a dealership and you don't have a key for that vehicle, what you're going to have to do is you're going to have to go to the parts department and have a key cut. But first, you provide a proof of ownership, right? So to answer your question, the locksmith is liable too as well, and of course, somehow the dealership is liable too as well. So it's a bad situation in general.
Okay. Mike, do you recommend letting the locksmith check the cars and do all the keys that are needed, like you do with the picture/window sticker guys?
Well, when you have your locksmith on your lot, you got to pre-negotiate what kind of standard that your dealership has. So when you're saying, do you want your locksmith to just come on the lot and start cutting keys? Of course, you don't want that. You want to have a standard, whether a sales standard, whether you're selling your key, each car with 2 keys or 2 keys and one working remote. So, there just has to be a standard there to follow prior to having a locksmith on your lot. So, I wish, dealers would let us go on the lots and make a million keys without asking, but it doesn't work like that. You definitely want to make sure that you have that standard set in place.
Okay. Mike, if you give a customer a $100 or $200 voucher for a key, what do you do if the key costs more than that?
So when you're giving that voucher, and I used an example prior to this, it's a voucher with your local locksmith, right? You're partnering basically with your local locksmith. So that voucher says, okay, here's a $100 voucher. The customer makes an appointment, gets the key cut, and the key comes back $150. At that point, the customer saved $100, and now they have to come out of the pocket for $50. The customer's going to have to pay the balance of that, and then the challenge with that would probably be finding your working with your local locksmith to organize something like that. But it's definitely doable, and it's definitely a great idea to have something like that in place to combat any situation where your customer may be turned off. If by not having a second key, you can mediate that by just offering them a voucher towards their second key.
Okay. Well, it looks like that's our last question that's been typed in so far. Everybody that's on the call right now, please, if you have another question, please type it in right now, because as right now we don't have any more in the queue. Again, I'd like to thank everybody for joining us today. I really appreciate you taking the time to join us, and I hope you learned a lot. Mike, we all appreciate you taking the time to teach us more about how keys can help us sell more cars and add something to the bottom line. Now, everybody that's on the call right now, please join AutoSuccess webinars. Please, go there to find out about future webinars as well and suggest future webinars. Mike, is there anything that you'd like to share with our audience today before we let them go?
For the record, I have 2 sets of keys for all my cars, and you should too. And
that's great.
And if any of you want to discuss anything further, feel free to email me directly if you have any questions. And I enjoyed this opportunity to do this webinar. I want to thank you all. Happy holidays, and I hope you guys have a safe and Merry Christmas.
Now, everybody on the call, in case you don't have Mike's email address, I'm going to invite him to share that here in a second. And for those of you that are driving, you're going to get a thank you email from me that's automated that comes from GoToWebinar. That's my real email address. If you're driving or you're busy right now and you can't write it down, don't get in an accident. Just respond to that email that you'll get from me, and I'll give you Mike's address. But for those of you that are sitting at a desk right now, Mike, why don't you share with them your email address?
It's Mike.Morales, Morales, at HTLKEYS.com. Mike.Morales at HTLKeys.com.
Fantastic. Well, Mike, thank you for joining us today. Everybody on the call, I hope to see you all on a future AutoSuccess webinar. That includes you, Mike. And I hope you all have a wonderful Christmas and New Year's, and we'll see you soon. Good afternoon, everybody.
All right. Thank you, Brian. Thank you. Bye.
Thanks, Mike.